Alright, so in the last video we went through and we created the structure of our typical wall section. The next video after this series, we're going to basically take this drawing and start annotating it and putting all the details on it. The problem with us doing that right now is we are currently at a 1/4 inch equals a foot scale. We're going to want to show this wall section at a different detail level. So we're going to either do a 1/2 inch equals a foot or maybe a 3/4 inch equals a foot scale. And AutoCAD can handle that by doing some different scales and different viewports, but it doesn't handle it real nicely. So what we'll end up doing is we'll take this drawing and block it out, make it its own drawing, and then work on that in a different location. So what we're going to do instead right now is we're going to use this wall section to basically create all of our elevations and our roof plan using orthographic projection. So I'm going to get rid of this one over here that I started. I'm just going to erase that, and I'm going to make sure this is aligned one more time. Looks like it is. And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to rotate it, and then I'm going to move this into location so that it's aligned with the floor plan where it needs to be aligned. So I'm going to drop it right there. Before I do anything else, I'm going to say move, enter, P for previous, enter, and I'm just going to move it out away from the building. So at this point it's the exact same wall on the opposite side, so I can just mirror this across. So if I chose this, if I was looking for the midpoint to mirror this from, I'm not going to have a midpoint because this wall is broken. These lines are broken. So I could possibly use my dimension string. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to draw a line out from that wall, line out from that wall, draw the perpendicular line there, and I'm going to leave this here to use as my mirror line. So I'm going to mirror that entire wall section from that midpoint, and then I'm going to double check to see if this is lined up by just drawing a line down. And it is lined up with the exterior face of my stud. At this point I could use my fillet command. I'm going to fillet that line with that line. That becomes the peak of my roof. I'm going to fillet this line with this line with this line, and there used to be a command called glue that I could join these together. AutoCAD did away with that for some reason. So I think there might be like a join command or something like that, but I think the easiest way at this point, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to extend that over, and I'm going to do the same thing with these. I'm going to delete that, extend that one to there, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to extend that one to there. I like to have continuous lines the whole way across instead of having little line segments. And I could do the same thing with this. Delete that. Delete that. I'm going to extend this lower one to there, and extend this one to there. And you can see now I have what I could use as a section, building section, or I could start to use it as an elevation. So I can do the same thing down here, where I basically have this front line. I can use this back line as my mirror line, so I'm not going to worry about creating another line. I'm going to move this down here a little bit out of the way, and I'm going to mirror it from the midpoint of that line. This is why it's critical that you use complete lines, not line segments, because I wouldn't be able to find my midpoint if I did that. And I'll just double check to make sure that's correct. Drawing that line down. Looks good. And at this point, I could extend these, or I could fillet these lines, but the roof trusses aren't going that direction. Instead, the roof trusses are sloping up from the front and the back. So I already determined my height, my total height of my building right here. So I can copy this whole thing. I can rotate it with my ortho on. I can move it from a common point to a common point. I could have picked any of those common points. Move previous, and I'm going to move it out of the way. This right here is going to be the height of my building, the roof. So I can draw a line across here, and that represents the total height of my roof. I can fillet this line with this line with that line, and I can get rid of these ones altogether. And just start cleaning this up, getting rid of lines that I don't need. And basically, let's undo that real quickly. In elevation view, and that's what we're doing these for, to create elevations, our elevation view, this is going to be my fascia. So I want to keep that line, and I want to keep this point right here. So that and that is going to be my fascia. I'm going to go ahead and delete all the other stuff. I'm just going to take these one last time. I'm going to redo that. This is my outermost overhang on this side, that 1 foot. So I am going to keep that line. I'm going to draw that line in. I'm going to erase everything else there. I'm going to take these two lines and I'm going to stretch them over this way. Before I do that, I'm going to get rid of these ones. I'm going to stretch these over and get rid of all this stuff. Stretch them, and then I can fillet those ones, and I can trim this one off. So that represents my fascia. So at this point, if I'm going to start drawing my foundation, the next thing is to start cleaning all these things up. So, or if I'm going to start drawing my elevations, I'm going to start cleaning these things up. So I'm going to keep this line, and I'm going to get rid of all these ones inside. I'm going to trim that off right there. And with my ground line, I'm going to keep this line. I'm going to change it to my grade line, and I'm going to delete all this. I think I'll leave this in here. Maybe I'll show this as a hidden line. I think I'll show that as a hidden line. So we're going to leave it in there for right now. I'm going to drag this over here. Get rid of that. And I'm starting to get more and more of an elevation here. I'm going to erase all these things. I'm going to see parging from here to grade, so I can get rid of that line. Get rid of that. My siding is going to extend down to this point where my OSB covers, so it's going to extend past the slab a little bit. We were doing that so that we created that natural drip edge. So I will go ahead and take that across, leave it like that. I won't see the bottom of my slab anymore. I am going to trim that off. And I want to keep the top of my slab so I can show where my doors are going to stop at. So at this point I could use my XL command V, and I'm going to show my garage door locations. So at this point I know my garage doors are 7 feet high, so I'm going to offset this line from the slab, the top of the slab, up 7 feet, and I can see, fillet these, I can trim it from there, and that's my garage door opening. Do the same thing for here. XL, enter, V, enter. Offset this up 7 feet. Fillet that, trim. And now I have my 2 garage door openings there, which I'll spend a little bit more time on cleaning those up. Alright, so the next thing is we're definitely not going to have any detail like that in our elevation. We're not going to show mortar joints. So I can cut those out. I know how I want to show these. I'm just trying to think of how I want to do the layer. I'm going to trim that off, and I'm going to extend this down, clean that up. I'm going to extend a line here, or draw a line there, and I'm going to trim out this part, this line that represents the top of the slab. I would not see the top of the slab there because the siding would come down past, and then I can trim this off. I'm going to do the same thing with these. That, trim that out, trim this off. This would all represent siding. This would represent the slab. It's going to be covered up with parge, so I'm going to trim that out, like on the other side. I'm going to actually get rid of the bottom of the slab because we're not going to see it. Going to be covered up with parging. Go ahead and extend this down, erase these, get rid of that. And at this point I think I want to create a layer I'm going to make a new layer called A dash below grade, and I'm going to make the color, let's make the color 10 dash LA, make A dash low grade color 10, and I'm going to make the line type hidden. So now anything that shows up below this ground line, this grade line, is going to show up as hidden. So I can click on these objects and I can change them to that layer I just made, A dash below grade. And since I'm showing all this as hidden, what I would also want to do is I want this line to extend the whole way past, because this footing is continuous the whole way around the building. So if I'm showing it as hidden, I'm going to show the footing in the background as well. Okay, so the next thing would be to start adding all the different detail to these elevations. So we could work on the door, showing some detail. We could add roof, siding. At this point I'm going to start making some layers. Layer, make A dash siding, and I'm going to make that color 15 as well. I want thin line, and I'm going to use my hatch command. I'm going to save before I do my hatch command, because the latest releases of AutoCAD there's a lot of hatch problems. And I'm going to type in H, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to pick points in my hatch dialog, and I'm going to choose an open space in here, and I click, and it locked up my computer for a second. Not too bad. So instead of using a pattern, a pre-made pattern, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say user defined, and my spacing for this is going to be, I'm going to use a Dutch lap vinyl siding, and my spacing is going to be 4.5 inches. The angle is going to be 0. And this is what it's going to look like. I can go ahead and say enter, and it gives me my siding. I'm going to make a layer. Make A dash shingles, and I'm going to use color number 10 for those. Again, I'm going to hatch. I'm going to pick points, and this time I am going to use a pattern. And I'm going to look for AR roof. I don't want the shakes. I'm not using cedar shakes. I'm going to use the AR roof, and I'm just going to play around with this hatch scale, the density, until it looks good. Try 10. Still a little bit too dense. I'm going to try 20. And I'm going to try 25. And I can live with that. Okay, the next step would be to go through and start adding some detail to these doors. The first thing I need to do is get these layers cleaned up here. So I'm going to match properties, make that bottom the same as the bottom and the top the same. And basically what I want to do is I want to divide these into 4 equal sections. So I can use the divide command in AutoCAD to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and say divide, and whenever I do this, I'm going to pick, it's asking me how many number of segments. So if I divide it into 4, first of all, after you do the divide command, if you've never used it before, you're going to say, well, it didn't do anything. It doesn't actually break this line into 4 segments. What it does is it puts 4 nodes, or 4 points, on this. If you don't have your point style set, you can't see them. And as I zoom in, they get smaller and smaller. There's one right there. I can see there's one down here. So the easy way to do this is to change your point style. And let's see, just type in point. No. Let's try point style. And that's not it. Alright, so to change the point style, we're going to type in p-type, and it's going to bring up this little dialog box, and you can literally pick any of these. I'm just going to pick this X, and once I do that, oops, hit it cancel instead. Now you choose this X and say OK. Now the points are going to show up. And the problem with this is I chose to break this into 4 different sections, and it only, if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, so it did. So I only have 3 points, but it has 4 sections. So at this point, I can draw a line from this point. Now the point is not showing up in my O-snaps. So there's a couple different ways that I can do that. I have a tendency to do shift right click and then choose node, or I think it's D is the shortcut. So I could do line, shift right click D, shift right click D, keep on hitting the wrong letter, do a line, shift right click D, or I could come down here to my O-snap settings, hit the little caret, and I can add node to this temporarily and then just turn it off whenever I need to. So I'm going to use the, oh, that's on a truss layer, so let's make a door layer. Or let's find out what my door layer is up here and use that. A-door. Alright, so let's change all these to the door layer. I'm going to select these that got by me, add those on a truss layer. So I'm going to select those 4 lines for each door, and I'm going to change those to A-door. And then I'm going to put A-door as the current layer as well. So now I could come in here, and now whenever I hover over top of that point, my node O-snap locks in place. So I'm going to just draw lines from the node to the perpendicular. And now I have it broken into 4 different sections. Well, at this point, I'm not going to waste my time dividing this and doing that all again. I'm just going to copy these 4 different sections from there to there, 2 common points. But instead of doing it now, I'm going to go through and we're going to add some basic windows first. So I'm going to delete these points, and again, I'm going to put 4 windows across here. So I'm going to divide, select that object, divide it by 4, adds those in, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different sections to this. I'm going to draw my line from node to perpendicular. And I can erase those. And at this point, I'm going to switch to A-door frame, or let's do A-door trim, just because we're going to have a lot of detail in here and I don't want to see all that detail. So, and this is going to be a thinner line. So I'm going to offset 1 inch. And whenever I do this, I'm going to change the offset settings, the layer to source, or I'm sorry, the layer to current. So whenever I offset, I'm going to offset 1 inch, and I'm going to end up with that. I'm going to fillet this. And then I'm going to offset 1.5 inches in again. And this is simply going to represent my window frame and the glass on the inside. So at this point I could go through and I can copy this, and I'm going to copy it from that end point, or I can do that midpoint to this midpoint, to this midpoint, and then to the perpendicular. And then I'm going to erase these lines in between. And there I'm showing some windows in the top row of my garage doors. I could also place them, I could place them in any of them if I wanted to. So at this point, I'm going to go through and I'm going to copy those 2 lines, that line. I'm going to zoom in, do a crossing window, and I'm going to choose all those but not that line because I already have that one there. And I'm going to copy all of these from a common point to a common point. So whenever it asks for my base point right now, I can see that that's a common point with that. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to choose that to there. And now I have my windows in that location too. So I basically have all of my materials shown. The only thing I don't have shown is my parge here. So sometimes I just use a sand hatch to show that. So I'm going to hatch. First of all, I'm going to say layer make A-parge color 14, enter, enter. I'm going to hatch now, pick that as my point, come up here to my patterns. I'm going to find the sand one. Maybe. Could use dots. One more time. AR sand. And whenever you look at this, I don't know if anything's showing up at all, so I'm going to take this all the way down to 1 instead, and now you can see some sand in there. We'll just give the texture of concrete parge, and I might make it 2. Looks good. So I can hit enter, and this would be my elevation before I added any kind of notes, annotations, dimensions, anything like that. So that would be the next step to this.